so much, sir, for speaking to CNN News 18. In fact, sir, there's a very popular English proverb. They say that you reap what you sow, but in diplomacy, it's the other way. You sow, but your successor reaps it. Now, your tenure has been highly successful, and in fact, you are leaving a legacy behind, and we are witnessing India-Australia relationship in the best form ever. What an amazing visit that was of Prime Minister Modi to Australia, the kind of welcome he has received, the grand diaspora event, and Prime Minister Albanese called him the boss. And in fact, here in India on Instagram Reels, Twitter, the boss is the new name for Prime Minister Modi. Sir, would like to understand from you, first, how do you look at India-Australia relationship, and what more has to be done in terms of relation to him? And second, only Mr. Albanese thinks that Prime Minister Modi is a boss, or whole of Australia, the people of Australia also recognize the importance of India, significance of India now?
So it was an extraordinarily positive and exciting visit, particularly the event at the arena where all of the politicians, all of the Australian politicians in the room wished that they could speak to an audience like that, both as well as Prime Minister spoke, but also having so many people chanting his name. That's uncommon in Australia. Diaspora events, as our Prime Minister's travel, is not the way, but that's because the Indian diaspora is the largest in the world, in every country. So it was tremendous, but both of our Prime Ministers are keen for greater ambition. And it is a partnership. Whilst my Prime Minister's joke about the meeting and in the arena being noisier than the Bruce Springsteen concert he'd gone to, the man who in pop music is called the boss, it is a genuine partnership between two countries that are getting closer, and in a large way because of the growing diaspora in Australia. So we're a country of just over 25 million people. 1 million of those were either born in India or have a parent born in India. They're energetic, they're ambitious, they're influential, and they're now the greatest salespeople for the Australia-India relationship. They're Australian citizens telling Australian businesses and others of opportunities that exist in India for investment and for business, and also for tourism, and equally for Australia. They're our greatest advocates of the quality of our university education and of tourism to Australia. So it's a win-win whichever way you look at it, but both Prime Ministers are demanding. Both Prime Ministers want results, not rhetoric, and each time they meet, they set bigger agendas. So we delivered in this meeting a new migration and mobility partnership. We delivered a hydrogen task force. We delivered a new Centre of Australia-India Relations. We delivered an announcement around new consulates in Brisbane and Bengaluru. And that's what our Prime Ministers like to see when they meet.
Okay. Also, post the Prime Minister's visit, there was some section in Australia asked this question to Prime Minister Albanese, and he was questioned perhaps that why did the Opera House and the other important buildings in Australia were lit up with Indian flags, and the same was not done during King's coronation. And the reply was quite interesting. The Prime Minister said that the Indians in Hyderabad and Bengaluru will invest in Australia and will get some more dollars to the country. That was a reply. So it also talks about growing India's strategic and economic importance. And also, Ambassador, would like to know from you that is India more important than England for Australia now?
Well, two things. As a former Chief Minister of New South Wales, the decision around lighting up the Opera House for the coronation was one for the state government, not the centre. And as Prime Minister Albanese said, there's 1.4 billion reasons why we would light up the Opera House in honour of Prime Minister Modi's in honour of Prime Minister Modi's visit, because both Prime Ministers understand the importance of the economic relationship, the fact that we have complementary economies, we can assist each other to grow their economy, to create jobs, to lift living standards in both countries. And that's what's driving this partnership, as well as, of course, our shared interests and also those shared challenges in the Indo-Pacific. So, from defence through to trade, from tech through to agriculture, we're helping each other in a world which is increasingly competitive, and where in a region where we're both committed, as your Prime Minister said, it's our sacred duty to deliver that free, open and prosperous Indo-Pacific where all nations, whether they're as big as India, as big in size as Australia, or a small island, have sovereign choices.
Okay, sir, also, India is not a part of any military grouping in Indo-Pacific. Australia is a part of AUKUS, or India is a part of Quad, but Quad is again not a military grouping. Now, there is a push which is being made to, efforts are being given so that India could join NATO Plus. Now, Australia is a member of NATO Plus. Sir, I would also like to highlight that India is perhaps the only country which has taken over China militarily. Other countries do have concerns with the growing Chinese dominance. They talk about Chinese aggression, dominance, but India is the one country which shares borders with China, and time and again we have fought with China on borders. What is your position, perhaps your country's position, if India joins NATO Plus? Do you think that current position of India playing a neutral role between the two blocs is good, or if India joins NATO Plus, that would be more effective with regards to open and free Indo-Pacific?
So no friend of India is going to push it to do anything outside of its national interest, and certainly not Australia. Countries will always make decisions according to the national interest. The Quad is not a military congregation. It's about practical things like health, like climate change, like infrastructure, and we're now even giving away scholarships for young people to study science, technology, energy and maths. But ultimately, whether it's the technology transfer, which is what AUKUS is about, it's not an alliance, it's not a partnership, it's nothing more than a means for getting technology to improve our submarines, which lift capability in the Indo-Pacific against those threats in the Indo-Pacific, and that's why it's welcomed across the Indo-Pacific. The fact is that when India had its border incursion from China in 2020, I had my first visit with Dr. Jaishankar. We delivered our support for India. We don't support any change in the status quo because we understand when you change boundaries, when you try and unilaterally change boundaries, it increases risks and it increases the likelihood of poor outcomes. And so we will support India in a variety of ways across our region. I think collectively, one of the strongest defences for any region, for any nation, are strong economics, and that's what both India and Australia are working on. But if India wants to join NATO or something else, that will be a matter for India. And frankly, we understand, as Australia does, that if you have a border incursion or you have a trade dispute, you need to talk to the other party to try and stabilise your relationships. But stabilising relationships with any party does not mean you give up your national interest.
Okay. Sir, in fact, this year, there have been several attacks reported on Temple, and in fact, Prime Minister Modi did raise the issue. He was assured by Prime Minister Albanese that the government of Australia is not going to tolerate. Even the attacks have reduced, and the government has started acting against those perpetrators. But again, sir, when I speak to people from the Indian community in Australia, the diaspora, they by and large have this complaint that the cases are registered or perhaps the security is provided to the foreign offices. But in terms of prosecution or in terms of taking some strict action which can break the morale of such groups is not being done by the government of India. What do you have to say on this?
Well, the Australian government is making every effort, as Prime Minister Albanese promised your Prime Minister when he visited in March, to ensure that those who deface or attack places of worship in Australia, whether a Hindu temple or whether a Jewish synagogue, will be prosecuted, because that's our law. Those who engage in violent protests will be held to account, and those who engage in hate speech in Australia, which is also outlawed, will be prosecuted. And there have been arrests, there have been prosecutions, but of course it's also, in every democracy, hard at times to track down the ultimate culprit. But as Prime Minister Albanese assured Prime Minister Modi, all of our law enforcement agencies, state and centre, are working hard on this, because this is just not an attack upon a religion from India. It's also an attack upon our multicultural, multi-faith community, which is a vibrant, peaceful community where people can express their views but do so in a peaceful way. And we pride ourselves on being one of the most successful multicultural communities in the world, and this has an impact for us as well as it does for those Indian diaspora members in Australia, as well as the distress it causes here.
So my last question, how has been your experience working with Foreign Minister Jaishankar? You have worked closely with him. In fact, there have been several meetings that we personally saw you attending with Jaishankar. So what is your opinion, for him, and how has been your relationship with him?
It's been one of the best parts of my time here, because it's rare in a democracy like ours that people who are specialists in a particular area get to be ministers in that area. And what he's demonstrated in the time that I've been here is not just how highly intelligent he is, but how visionary he is and how effective he is in getting results. And frankly, that's not a bad summary of India.
Thank you so much for speaking to CNN News 18, and I wish you all the very best for your future endeavors.
Thank you very much, Tav.